geek. Talking baseball every week. 'Cause they're Gleeman and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman and the Geek, presented by Black Stack Brewing. Now available in your local liquor store, you lucky dogs. Black Stack Brewing. My name is John Bonus of Twitter Daily. With me, catching up on 2 weeks worth of lots and lots of stuff, Aaron Gleeman of The Athletic.
We got some stuff to talk about. I'm going to be honest with you, John.
We
Sometimes we don't, and we just talk for 97 minutes anyway.
That's right.
Today we do, and so I don't even want to know. It might be 3 hours today. Welcome to the Derek Shelton era for the Minnesota Twins. The last time we did a free show on YouTube, and if you guys are just listening too, we were talking about the manager search.
Yes.
And
right.
in the 2 weeks that followed, they got it down to, I think, probably 2 real finalists, but I think 4 finalists, 2 real ones, Shelton, and then it sounds like James Rowson, who's also familiar, was the hitting coach on the 2019 staff that Shelton was the bench coach on under Baldelli, was the runner-up. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but since then, we've done an emergency Patreon podcast when news of the Shelton hiring broke a week or so ago.
Yeah.
And then we both attended, what was that on, Tuesday afternoon, the introductory press conference for Shelton, which was at Target Field. And then we got home from that and did kind of a takeaways from that, talking to Shelton, talking to Falvey, talking to other people there for the Patreon folks. So this is my way of saying it's been 2 weeks since you've seen us on YouTube or on the free show or heard us
Right.
on the free show. It's been about like 6 minutes since people have gotten a Patreon from us. So sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. So we also, in between that time, we did a World Series live stream for game.
Yeah, that's right. I was trying to
4.
remember. We also did a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot, just, on the Patreon side.
Just not with you, dear listener.
Yeah. Well, about half of you.
Well, that's true. You're right.
Roughly. So let's obviously get into the Shelton stuff right off the top. There's a few things. Like, one, let's just run through. We spent an hour plus doing this, but let's just run through. Who he is, how
Sure.
he became a candidate, all that stuff, and then maybe we'll do a quick version of kind of the takeaways we had from speaking to him for the first time as a Twins manager. I've spoken to him before, but not much, because I think there were some interesting little tidbits to be gleaned from the press conference, or at least from these kind of side media sessions that take place after the press conference.
Yep.
In part because that's where Falvey answered some of the similar questions that we had asked him a month ago, and he had sort of tap danced and kicked the can down the road, and he kind of did another version of that.
Yes.
So we'll get into all that, but I wanted to just start off the top with who's Derek Shelton. First of all, apparently everyone calls him Shelty, which is helpful. I knew that, but it's really helpful,
right?
Because now you can't say Derek said this,
yes,
because there's Derek Falvey and Derek Shelton. So one, I guess, will be Derek, and one will be Shelty.
I think it kind of got Falvey off the hook on the press conference, because people would say, "Derek, can you answer this question?"
Yeah.
And he could just look at Shelty.
Yeah,
Say, "This one's for you, obviously."
Yeah, that's not that far off. But I don't know. I know it's his nickname. He's probably been called it for 40 years, but I have a hard time calling as a 42-year-old man, calling a 52-year-old or a 55-year-old man, "Hey, Shelty." But
yeah,
whatever.
that's right.
First Twins manager since Gene Mauch in 1976 to have previous major league managing experience, which is sort of remarkable to me, because that has become less and less of a prerequisite for these jobs. And we've seen it actually in this hiring cycle, where there are 8 or 9 total managerial openings. So almost a third of the entire league is going to be filling their manager spots. And there were a lot of outside the box thinking. You had a college coach taken over with the Giants with no previous managing experience. You had some very recently retired players. You had a front office guy. If anything, I think Shelton is
Kurt Suzuki had a 1-year contract, was one of the ones that surprised me. Right?
That's just because the Angels are a mess. But yes,
yes.
I would say, out of the 8 or 9 jobs that have now been filled, Shelton might be like the least outside the box. Like he
Right,
might be
yeah.
the most sort of by the numbers, 55-year-old baseball lifer, been a hitting coach, been a bench coach, managed previously up until May when he was fired by the Pirates. But I did think within the context of the Twins, that's interesting because, the Twins, certainly going back 50 years, which 1976, it's surprising to me that that's 7 consecutive Twins managers who had 0 prior major league managing experience.
For an organization that seems to be pretty conservative overall, right? That's swimming upstream, swimming against the current sort of for the majority of their. I mean, one of the things that almost a cliche, managers just keep getting recycled, right? And this is an example. For 50 years, managers have not been recycled here.
Now we saw some of their ex-managers get recycled, like Gardenhire, etc. But Tom Kelly at the time in 86,
right,
mid 86, was an extremely outside the box hire.
Right,
he was a very recently retired AAA player, basically, and he was like in his early 30s, I think, or mid 30s maybe. So anyway, that I think was interesting. But kind of tied to that, this is so unsurprising on every level, to the point that I bet if you go back and listen to the show we did probably on Patreon, emergency episode, the day they fired Baldelli officially, a few weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, whatever it was. I'm going to guess we talked a lot about Derek Shelton, and it was him or Rousen we thought was like the familiar name, bring him back, that, all that sort of stuff.
Short of bringing somebody directly back from the staff itself, that would seem to be the most familiar type hire they make. Yeah.
In terms of what he did in Pittsburgh, now we should preface this by saying nobody wins in Pittsburgh. It's one of the worst situations to be in, and has been for decades since I was a kid, since the early 2000s at the very least. Like, they have bottom 5 payrolls every year. They're very bad at player development. They don't really, even when they do develop some star players, Paul Skeens obviously being the number 1 pick, I don't know how much development was involved there, but they end up with one of the best young pitchers of all time. They don't say to themselves, hey, maybe we should kind of beef up the roster around this guy because he's a special talent, and in 4 years he's going to leave as a free agent. They just kind of go through the motions. And so I bring that up because, you look at Derek Shelton's record over 6 seasons there. He joined them in 2020 and he was fired in mid-May. 306 wins, 440 losses. That's a .410 winning percentage. That is the 3rd worst winning percentage in the history of Major League Baseball for anyone to manage that many games. And the best season out of 6 with the Pirates was 76 wins. So he didn't even have a 500 record in a given season. And he was fired in May, like I said, after going 12-26 to start the season. And what's interesting about that firing and the timing of it, and he kind of talked about this, I thought, at the press conference, those to me were some of the more interesting answers in a series of answers that weren't super revealing at all from him or Falvey. I thought the ones where he was like, yeah, I don't really blame him now for firing me. They wanted a new voice, change in leadership. But the interesting part about the timing was that gave him half a season, basically, to just sort of sit and think and talk to other people. And he did some media stuff with radio on the MLB radio, I think. And I wonder if that made him, I don't want to say a more appealing candidate, but it made it more plausible to hire him having sat out for 7 months instead of if he had been fired, let's say, at the end of the season. Like, if you get fired on October 1st, which basically Baldelli was, and let's say they had gone, 65 win season, it wasn't going to be a pretty season, obviously, for the Pirates. Is it as smooth for the Twins from their perspective, even if they want to hire him, to turn around and hire a guy who had been fired 3 weeks earlier? Like, does that come across as even more of a just retread, name, that sort of thing? Whereas you do it in May and he goes home and he joked that, his wife, his longtime wife, has gotten so used to him not being around in the summer that she very quickly was like, you need to leave the house. Like, you need to,
that's right. Yeah.
But there's a component of that where it's like he gets,
why are you still here?
Yes. Becky does that every time they have a road trip and I'm home. Like, it's like,
so I'll show this. I had 2 friends get married right out of college. Right. And it was one of the things I hadn't thought about is, she had come from a family where her dad was a pilot. And he was just from a family. Dad was a lawyer. Mom stayed at home at something. And literally like 2 weeks into their being married and living together, she looked at him and like, why are you still here?
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in a family where the dad was gone half the time. He was flying Delta flights from all these other places. And there's something like, oh, neither of us have any idea what marriage is like. Our total, like, we've built an entirely different thing. So I always think of that when that's
that's where we have that in the off season in my house, where she's like, why have you not moved from the couch in 7 literal days? Like, what? But in terms of this job, I think that it seems like from his answers, and I think this is logical too, like it gave Shelton an opportunity to sort of cool down, view it more not from a place of frustration or anger from being fired, but from a place of, all right, big picture. I see why they fired me. I got 6 years, wasn't going well, trending wrong, needed a new voice. I mean, these are the same things that the Twins said almost identical regarding Baldelli. And we talked about that obviously over the last several weeks. And then, beyond that, he, in the interview process, they talked about asking him this, and the media asked him this too when we were there Tuesday. It's like, what's different? Like, what have you learned? What did you do wrong that you will not do again? What did you do right that you will lean into further? And he didn't have the most satisfying answers on that front, obviously, but that's what they're banking on, right? From the Twins' perspective and from Shelton's perspective too, is like they're banking on 6 years with the Pirates not necessarily being meaningful in terms of your skill as a manager. But then even if it is somewhat meaningful, and it's still a major league job, there's only 30 of them. He even said that at the time.
And the Twins might not be in a significantly different place than the Pirates are.
That's my thing. Is like they're certainly trending closer towards each other as organizations than 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever. But then beyond that, like, that was your first chance. And in a lot of situations, especially given that he was like 50 when he got the Pirates job, that might be your only chance. And so in a way, he's fortunate to not only get a second managing job, but a second one right away. Like next season. Didn't even have to sit out a season. Didn't have to go do TV for a season or be a bench coach for a season. Just right on it. Arguably, certainly a better situation. You can argue about how much better of a situation the Twins are than the Pirates. But so I thought that's what they're banking on. But, within that, from my point of view, it's very easy to say, here's what happened. Fell apart with the Twins. They made the same decision that the Pirates made with Shelton, but with Baldelli, which is, do we think he's the worst manager? No. Do we think he actually is an okay job? Would we hire him if he were sort of a nameless candidate? Maybe. But we needed a change in leadership. We needed a change in voice. Obviously, maybe that was pushed a little bit from the Pohlad side. And then the Twins were faced with an opportunity to make an outside-the-box hire, to make a big, all-or-nothing type of swing with a young person or someone from college or whatever it is. And they predictably leaned into familiarity and someone who's done it before, but also someone they're comfortable with personally, like everyone you talk to there. And it's easy to see why, talking to him. He's a charming guy. He's a funny guy. He's self-deprecating.
I mean, he's good. He's good enough that he ended up being immediately going to radio after being fired from being manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
We know enough about radio. We've been on radio.
He's a savvy at sort of spinning and understanding and speaking. So within that, like, I get why this ended up being the hire for the Twins. And I don't have a problem with it. Like, I think he is a perfectly solid, viable candidate to manage. And I don't even think the Pirates thing should preclude him from, getting another job right away. But it does, kind of reek of familiarity and kind of a placeholder situation where it's like, we don't know if this team will even be competitive, not just in 2026, but 2027 maybe. We don't know what the ownership situation is going to be. The front office, if they have another bad season, who knows how much job security they even have. And so it's like, can we bring in someone here who is happy to get another managing job? And I don't mean that in like a derogatory way. I just mean like he's excited for this opportunity, almost independent of what the opportunity is. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's one of 30 jobs. He wants it. And can we bring in someone we're familiar with, we're confident is a good person who can check a lot of the boxes that we want,
is, this is going to sound mean, but is used to losing and is not going to like lose his head because
Right.
the team is not good.
Can handle losing. How about
Yes.
that? Right. Yeah.
And he certainly checks all those boxes in a way that I think people are comfortable with and they like him. And let's be honest, if you're going to have a bad year or a bad 2 years or a bad 3 years, you can you're in that foxhole with someone you feel comfortable being around. And I think that more than anything played a big part in this. And it's why from the start, I didn't think they were going to go at all outside the box. I thought this was going to be the logical conclusion to the search. And it ended up being that way. That doesn't mean it can't be a good hire. But the thing we talked about coming off Tuesday was, and we'll get into this a little later, like the lack of clarity, at least in terms of what they're willing to say publicly. Now, I'm sure they had much more revealing conversations with Shelton. In fact, both Derek's kind of joked like, oh, we had all these conversations. We answered all these questions with each other. We're just not going to tell you guys anything.
Right. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Fair enough. But then you leave us on our own and we can connect some dots there. But I wonder if this is just sort of, we don't know the direction of this thing for a couple of years. It's probably not going to be a great direction.
We might know the direction of this thing.
Right.
That direction is not forward.
Who can we bring in here who can at least, steady the ship, not crash it in any icebergs, and just sort of be a competent, well-liked, face of the team publicly for media and all that stuff. And, I do think he checks all those boxes, but I just wonder from his point of view, like, he no doubt wants to prove that he's a good manager, and he no doubt feels like he was limited in what he could do with Pittsburgh in terms of the rosters and the talent he was given. Yeah. But I just wonder, is he going to be in for a rude awakening here where it's like, oh, I'm still pretty limited in what I can kind of show here.
The three takeaways that I had on him, or my three reactions to him, or the first is what you're talking about, which is given the environment in which he is being hired into, how much does it matter who the manager is?
Right.
Given the big questions they're facing, whether it's the sale of the team or, $50 million of payroll potentially going away, or, the lack of player development that we've seen in the minor leagues, the deficit they have on sort of offense, like the big questions about this organization. I'm not sure how much, anybody could really come in and turn things around one way or the other. And I was sort of hoping that we would see a more aggressive hire from outside the organization to try and impact some of those bigger questions. Right. We didn't get that. And that's not Shelton's fault. And, like you said, maybe he views it, or maybe they're viewing it as sort of a caretaker position, but ultimately that was, disappointing, I think, to a lot of Twins fans, like, who get a sense that things are on their way downhill, and this was not a real attempt to change directions in any real direction, right? And that brings me to the second point, which is, for those people who thought Baldelli was the problem, from the stuff that we can see, he's not significantly different than Baldelli. We're not going to see a totally different style of the parts that we can witness. We're not going to see different in-game moves. We're not going to see,
Well, I joked he's Baco Raldelli.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I loved that. Those are my favorite lines.
And don't say that. You're getting my head too big. I'll try to make more jokes. So we know how that ends.
I've had a number of people say Baco Raldelli to me in the last 2 weeks. I credit you. Yeah. Let's look at you.
But there's our screenshot, by the way. But yeah, we talked about the familiarity, but he was literally the right-hand man, the bench coach, the number 2 on the staff to Baldelli in 2019. Now, he was hired the year before to join Molitor's staff, which he talked a lot about at the press conference working with Molitor. But he's very, very, very good friends with Baldelli, to the point that they continue to be friends, and they were talking throughout this process even. And he was getting kind of, hey, tell me about this, tell me about that from Baldelli. The idea, not only is there no hard feelings that he's replacing his friend, but they seem to be as good of friends as ever. And so, and then to your point, from a strategic standpoint, what I thought was funny is, he comes in, and a month ago when the day after they fired Baldelli, when we had the end of season media thing with Falvey and Jeremy Zoll, the GM, we were asking them, what are you guys looking for in a candidate? And they were very coy about it, but they said, we want someone to come in and clean up the fundamentals and focus on the little things and communication and base running. And then Jeremy Zoll, in a moment of self-awareness, kind of laughed and said, well, literally everyone in our spot says those identical things.
Right.
Any new manager that comes in is going to say, I'm going to work on fundamentals and base running and communication and details. Well, then sure enough, Tuesday during Shelton's press conference, that is like almost verbatim what he kept repeating in terms of what he's going to focus on. And by the way, that's not bad to say that, but the thing that I thought kind of struck me was, if you hire an outside the box person who's never managed in the majors before, recently retired player, somebody who's been on a staff but not the main role, someone from college, let's say, and they come in and they say, we're going to focus on fundamentals, I'm going to communicate, we're going to focus on defense and base running and also player development. These are all things that you want focus on, right? But it loses a little something when you just spent 6 years in Pittsburgh not accomplishing those things, at least in terms of what people could see on the field. And in fact, I read a lot of the coverage of his firing from the Pittsburgh side in the last week or so, Pittsburgh Post Gazette or the Athletic or whatever they covered. And it was sort of shocking to me how similar the criticisms of the team in 6 years under Shelton compared to the Twins in 7 years under Baldelli. It was almost identical. It was like, they lost cleanness in their play, base running, they were bad, fundamentals, they were bad. The in-game strategy, he juggled the lineups too often to platoon. He pulled starters too early. All this, he couldn't play small ball. He was waiting for homers. It was like Mad Libs, and you filled in Shelton instead of Baldelli. It was the same thing. And it's like, again, he was at a talent deficit in Pittsburgh. And talent deficits will often show themselves in a lack of fundamentals and a lack of that sort of thing. But I just don't know that that's not going to be kind of close to what he's at. It just was funny to me to know that they all know how cliche it is to say, I'm going to come in and we're going to focus on these 6 things that everyone says they're going to focus on. I've yet to see a manager press conference where he's like, screw the fundamentals. We're going to try to hit 3-run bombs. That's what we're going to focus on.
Do a lot of showboating. We're going to feel it. We're going to feel ourselves a little bit.
Which would be entertaining. And so it was funny to see them still kind of press forward and make that the messaging, which I get, even though we know that they know that we know that, everyone says that. But then also it loses a little something in terms of like plausibility or at least reliability when it's like, well, why didn't you do that in Pittsburgh? Like, why was player development bad in Pittsburgh? Why was the communication an issue at the end in Pittsburgh, et cetera, et cetera? But
that brings me to sort of my third takeaway on this, which is second one, like I said, was that I don't expect anything that we see to be much different than the Rocco Baldelli era, how he connects to players, kind of in-game stuff that he does, that sort of thing. I think their hope seems to be, and they seem really genuinely excited about him taking over as manager to the point you kind of forget, given all the other stuff going around, what a big deal it is to get a new manager and how excited that is to, former players and, people who are in leadership positions in this organization. I think their hope is that he's going to be better at the stuff we can't see, that he's going to be better at, connecting to players or, the managing part of managing, the stuff that we can't see, whether it's an in-game decision or how you're running camp or how, again, things like you can't possibly judge, like stressing fundamentals, that sort of thing, and bringing out the best in each player. Now,
but again,
is there any evidence
he failed at that in Pittsburgh?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, is there any evidence of that he's done that in the past?
Right.
I mean, it's hard to say because, like you said, it's Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
It's Chinatown. You have to get out while you can. It's bad. It's a bad situation.
That may sound like some weirdly racist remark by John, but it's a movie from the 1960s.
Yeah, 1970s. It's Jack Nicholson's one of his big movies.
Yeah.
Chinatown. It's Chinatown. You're in a no-win situation. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Right?
John says plenty of weirdly racist stuff, but that wasn't one of them. Usually not while we're recording. That's a joke. That's just a joke. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. And again, it's not because it went poorly in Pittsburgh, and because the criticisms of his time in Pittsburgh echo the criticisms of the Twins under Baldelli at the end, doesn't mean that was his fault. But what it does mean is it kind of removes the element of, oh, this guy's got a secret sauce for this.
Right.
This guy's got the ability to affect change in these regards, because he had 6 years to do it. And if we're being honest, by the end, his communication and his ability to relate to the players was one of the things that was pretty regularly called out.
Right.
Not, they didn't have some big revolt or something like that. It wasn't a mutiny, but that's the same as Baldelli. There wasn't a mutiny other than one day with Griffin Jacks. But like at the end, it was like, we need a new voice. And he even said, I agree, they needed a new voice. And it's interesting to then flip that and be like, and also the Twins needed a new voice, and that's going to be me.
That's right.
Like, okay,
that's right.
I get it. Before we get on, should we talk about our first sponsor here? You guys already heard from them. They're our presenting sponsor, Black Stack Brewing.
Yeah, Black Stack Brewing is, they're known for, I just had another Black Stack Brewing at Town Hall Tap yesterday. You can find it in various bars, but even better,
Shocking.
You can also find it at your local liquor store now. They can find it all over the state of Minnesota, from Grand Marais to Rochester, Winona to Fargo, and it doesn't stop at the border. Also distributing in Iowa and Wisconsin and North and South Dakota, and even as far away as Arizona, Washington, and soon Florida. So maybe I can have some when I'm in spring training this February. They also are now at the point where they're releasing, kind of some of their better, more experimental IPAs every week. The latest one is called Aptitude Test. It's a double Northeast IPA. So you want to be careful about how many of those you drink at one time. It's also, they've also got their flagships, the local 755 New England IPA, Slopes Pilsner. Both of those are sitting in my fridge right now. Pull Tabs Pale Ale, the Strawberry Rhubarb Sour. You might still be able to find some of their
Can I say
Oktoberfest out there.
Tuesday after the Derek Shelton press conference,
right?
We were in the parking lot outside Target Field, the players parking lot, and I saw John hand 2 sixers of Black Stack to another media person.
And if you would like to try a 4-pack, I would also, besides your local liquor store, which is the easiest way to get it, but also check out their tap room, which is one of the largest in the state of Minnesota. It's the former Spam Can Factory. They've got Bloody Marys and stuff as well if you've got over the weekends. But when you go in there, where you'll find probably even a wider array of their beers than you normally would, you can get a 4-pack, take home with you, and you just mention the code word Gleeman and the Geek, and they're going to give you $2 off a 4-pack. So ask for them at your local liquor store, or enjoy a beer on tap and take a 4-pack home with you from their tap room. Mention the code word Gleeman and the Geek for $2 off a 4-pack. Black Stack Brewing.
Or just find John in a parking lot. Honestly. Okay, so a few more things about Shelton, and then we'll kind of get on to some of the other coaching staff stuff and everything, kind of the fallout from that. But, he's 55, like I said. He's originally from Illinois, played baseball at Southern Illinois, was a very good college player, a catcher, plays rookie ball, single A in the New York Yankees farm system, then has a pretty serious elbow injury, and then basically retires as a player. And he was actually a pretty good hitter. And goes immediately into coaching. And we've seen that with some Twins folks in the past. It's like there are certain guys from the moment they're like 15, they are just kind of the coach of teams on the field. And I think that speaks to where he is now at 55, 30 years later, that pretty much all 30 of those years have been spent in professional baseball coaching, including 2 decades, 20 years on major league coaching staffs. He had I think 5 years as Cleveland's hitting coach, 7 years as Tampa Bay's hitting coach when he worked with Baldelli on that in the organization. Obviously was the bench coach under Molitor in 2018, bench coach under Baldelli in 2019, gets hired by Pittsburgh for 2020. And then, like I said, there for basically 5.5 years. I think just in general, we kind of touched on this already, but his rep is very likable guy, charismatic, good sense of humor, but also very smart, obviously tons of experience, but within that super detailed, super hardworking. And I think this goes towards when Baldelli was hired in 2019, that first spring training where Baldelli was a rookie manager. It was Shelton who kind of ran camp
Right.
In terms of, okay, we're doing this drill, here's the schedule, all that. And Baldelli was sort of, up in the man in the tower or whatever, kind of observing things. But there is a difference in being the detail-oriented, plan everything out guy who's running practice and training sessions and stuff. It's harder to do that when you are the person in the big chair, because you just are stretched so much more thin that you're supposed to be sort of hiring people that you trust to do that, which we'll get into his upcoming coaching staff and stuff shortly. But, in terms of that, like, he has the highest level experience that you're going to find in a manager. He's managed for over half a decade. He's been a bench coach for multiple managers, including a 100-win team that made the playoffs. And then he's been a hitting coach in two of the more consistently successful sort of forward-thinking organizations in Cleveland and Tampa Bay for 12 years total. So this is a baseball lifer. And, we kind of joked about this on the Patreon, where I always thought it was funny that the frustration people had with the Twins and with Baldelli kind of caused them to act as if Baldelli was some stat head nerd, when in reality, Baldelli was like a super athlete. Like, he was at 17, a first-round pick, and then has spent the next 20 years in baseball, and he's 6'5". He could have played volleyball, basketball, baseball. Now people are like, well, he's got his head in a spreadsheet, because they just don't like the way he goes about it. Well, Shelton is an even more extreme version of that. Right. Shelton has just, his entire life has been baseball. And trust me, he is not a spreadsheet guy. But what I think has happened with him, and maybe this is just a result of, it's hard chicken or the egg, is that a result of his ability to adapt and sort of blend together old school, which he is, with new school, which he is. That's why he was hired, because they believe he can sort of put those two things together. Was that a result of spending, significant time in Cleveland with that organization, which, by the way, Falvey was there too, Tampa Bay with that organization, and then the Twins? Or is that why he was hired by those organizations in the first place? Because they viewed him as someone who could kind of, yes, he's old school. Yes, he's a baseball lifer. Yes, he's grinded his way up the ladder for these jobs, but he's curious, and he's got an open mind, and he's smart, and he's detailed. And so he's someone who can take information and be the conduit to get that information to players. And that's really such a big part always, but certainly in the year 2025, of being a major league manager and your staff even. Yeah. Can you be sort of the conduit for information from the front office and the analytics department and the player development department is going to flow through you, and not only can't it stop at you, but it's like a game of telephone. You can't pass along bad information or pass it along in a way that players don't want to hear about it.
Right. And you've got, and in fact, since that most of the times it's going beyond you to your assistant coaches, to your players. Right. It's your job to kind of increase its momentum, or to say, how are we best going to present this data to Royce? Because he doesn't necessarily respond to this. He responds to this, something like that.
To know the individual personalities and kind of the learning styles or whatever of your clubhouse, that's a huge part of it. And when we talk about like clubhouse, did he lose the clubhouse or whatever? I think a lot of people think of it as like shouting matches, but it can just as easily be like, I'm telling people stuff and they're tuned out. They don't hear it. And so that's a big part of the job. And I have no doubt that he's good at that, because that's what he's done in these organizations that value that sort of thing. And so, like I said, he's good friends with Baldelli. They, he was a finalist for the job in 2019 that went to Baldelli, and then he had been on Molitor's staff, obviously. And it's my understanding that Baldelli got the job and very quickly called Shelton and was like, hey, I know you were up for this job. Like, I know you're disappointed. I want you to stay as my bench coach. Like, I really would like to work with you. And then they formed an even stronger bond over that point. I would give almost anything to have been a fly on the wall for their conversations over the last couple of weeks. Not only about, hey, tell me about this player, but about, hey, tell me about the Polads, or tell me about Jeremy Zoll, or tell me about Derek Falvey. I would love to have heard that.
Yeah, I think that is something that works in Shelton's favor. He does know probably more about what's been going on recently, and he's got. There's something to be said for being able to pick the former guy's brain, especially somebody who's on your side and rooting for you, and wants you to succeed. To say, hey, watch out for this. or watch out for that.
Watch out for
You
that
know?
John Bonus type.
Yeah,
He'll
exactly
really try
right.
to-
Don't let Gleeman ambush you. You know,
yeah,
that sort of thing.
that's my thing. I like the ambush. But yes, all that true. And they stressed that during the press conference. Falvey said a couple times, we could kind of skip the first several steps of a normal interview process because I didn't have to say to him, hey, tell me about your upbringing and your family.
Right.
I know his family. Like they were in the
yeah.
front row there. Like he's got a really nice big family and Falvey knows them all. Like, they had multiple years together. So, but you can spin that as a positive, the familiarity, which they did.
Sure.
You can also spin it as, familiarity in general is how the previous regime of the Twins, I think, got in trouble, which is they were so, insular and so unwilling to kind of break ranks in their hirings that they only promoted from within. They only had their ex-players and ex-coaches and ex-front office. And the problem is that assumes that there's a really good talent pool in your organization from which to pick. And when that dries up, then you're picking candidates who maybe wouldn't have warranted that. But then also for right now specifically, if ever there was a time not to lean into the status quo and familiarity with the Minnesota Twins, it's now on and off the field. They are an absolute mess. And so whatever argument there is for familiarity in general being a positive, and I think there are arguments for that. It's a tougher sell now because it's like familiarity with an organization that has just collapsed over the last 2 years, basically. And I know he wasn't
familiarity, but you don't want too much familiarity. His point could be, hey, I haven't been here for 6 years. It'd be in much better shape if I'd have been around for those 6 years.
Yeah. And so then, the press conference, I think they streamed it on like twins.com.
Yes.
I know a lot of people watched it.
Yes.
And then after that, which was about a half hour, I think, something like that, where it was Falvey on one side, Shelton in the middle, Jeremy Zoll on the other side. And then after that, the cameras turn off and then everybody sort of goes to their separate corners a little bit. And they have what are called scrums, which is just a bunch of media members circled around someone. And Falvey had one
in front of people's mouths.
Yeah, kind of like side sessions or something. You call it. Falvey had one, then Shelton had one, and Zoll had one, etc. We both kind of made a beeline to Falvey, and in part because Shelton and his family were like doing photo ops and stuff like that afterward. And I really found it sort of fascinating, and I think Falvey talked on the side for 20-something minutes too. It had been about 5 weeks since we were in the same place asking Falvey questions about the direction of the team, the payroll, trading veterans, the manager search, and he, I was more frustrated by it than you, but he just refused to answer anything in any sort of, substantive way. And at the time, what was funny, and this was like late September, it was the first week of October, I guess. He kept saying at the time, well, we don't need to know what the payroll is yet because the playoffs are ongoing and the offseason doesn't start for over a month. And it's like, well, okay, let's go with that. But now it's a month later.
Right.
And he basically said the identical thing, which is he said, well, the GM meetings are coming up next week, but not a lot of trades happen at the GM meetings. So we don't need to know the status of the team, the status of ownership, the status of the payroll, the direction of the team, which, look, he knows that's BS. I know that's BS. That's a thing you say when you cannot throw under the bus your bosses, your owners,
your employee. Yeah.
When there is an influx situation where they haven't maybe given you the determination of what the payroll is going to be, or
maybe they have.
Right. This is where my mind.
Or maybe you
goes
suspect where it's going to go, and
where the answers to those questions, the answers to. Do you expect this team to be competitive in 2026? Do you expect the payroll to go down further from where it was in 2025? Do you expect to have to trade Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Ryan Jeffers, et cetera, et cetera? Those sorts of questions, which he was asked a month ago and he was asked again Tuesday. If you know the answers to those questions, if they don't exist yet, then you try to dodge them. But if they do exist, but they're really, really bad, frustrating answers for a fan base to hear, then it's also something that you just sort of go, we'll see about that. I got to talk to so-and-so. We got to hear from ownership. Who knows what the payroll is going to be? Because here's the thing. There are going to be trades and signings this week, next week, and the week after that. And the idea that the Twins can't get involved fully in that or can't determine their course of action is, just silly. But also, if, let's say that it is true, Well, that is putting them at a tremendous disadvantage. Not because they're going to go out and sign somebody for $300 million. Obviously, they're not going to do that. But because he's going to walk into the GM meetings, and the first thing people are going to say to him is, "Hey, Derek, you guys trading Lopez?"
Yes.
And if he
exactly
hasn't
right.
spoken to ownership to the point that he can know whether he can keep a $21 million salary and still have some maneuvering ability, or he has to shed $20 million on salary, that affects the entire offseason. And so
Yep.
that to me, again, is frustrating. It's kicking the can down the road, which was sort of okay a month ago and has lost all semblance of plausibility now, because guess what? The offseason's going. It started.
Yeah.
We've
Yep.
seen some trades, minor trades already. We've seen, contract decisions already. So, and again, they repeatedly said, "Hey, we've talked through all this stuff." Derek Shelton said, "The answers I got to those questions are satisfying and I feel good about it." And then people were like, I thought it was funny. John Shipley from the Pioneer Press was sitting in front of me, and Shelton said that, and he goes, "Okay, well, what were the answers?"
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And I was like, "Great question, Ship."
Just to follow up on or interject here, I should mention we did an entire episode breaking down sort of what the Twins payroll situation looks like going into the 2026 season, right? Or into the 2025-26 off season, at least, right? Where we had a spreadsheet and we kind of walked everybody through. Here's the things that were there. I'm almost sure that was a Patreon episode. So patreon.com/Gleeman. You probably can find.
It's on YouTube because we used the there's visuals.
Yeah, well, there were visuals, but I think we did like clips of it on YouTube. But the rest of it, so anyway, look at some of the. If you are really interested in sort of the overall situation the Twins face with a $40 million cut in payroll this year, potentially a $40 million cut in payroll, and the different levels at which they could choose to be competitive or choose to not be competitive, as is more likely the case, go back to one of those episodes or sign up at patreon.com/Gleeman. Look for that.
Yeah, I mean, it matters because it matters. I mean, first of all, payroll just matters. The correlation between payroll and winning is as high as it's ever been. We talked about that a while ago. And, we just saw the number 1 payroll beat the number 5 payroll in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
13 of the last 14 World Series winners have had an above average payroll. We're not telling you anything you guys don't already know. But so it's just important on a big picture level. But then to John's point, right now their payroll is like 85, 90 million. That's kind of the baseline if they were to keep everyone they have. If that's the case and their payroll even stays stable from where it's been the last 2 years, they got like $45 million to spend.
Right. That's a lot of money to spend on first baseman, DH, and relievers.
Right.
Which is
that would
the
be
primary
great.
Right.
We can put together a lot of interesting targets and scenarios and roster building ideas with $45 million to spend. Or if they're planning to have a $95 million payroll, they have no money to spend and, in fact, might have to shed, let's say, Pablo Lopez's $20 million salary just to bring in some relievers, to bring in a marginal first baseman, that sort of thing. And so that's why it matters. It matters always. That's why we always, at the top of every offseason, try to get as much information and as much clarity as we can about the payroll, because it determines what we think about in terms of the possibilities for the Twins. If they tell us we don't have any spending room, well, then I'm not going to be telling you to go sign Rhys Hoskins.
Yeah,
but if they tell us we have $50 million in spending room, well, I got 5 relievers they should go try to sign and go get a first baseman and go get a backup catcher and on and on and on. Yeah. So it is, it's selfishly, it's frustrating not to have any clarity on that because we would like to cover the team in a way that is enlightening as opposed to just throwing darts in the dark and try to hit on what we think they're going to do. But then also, the less you are willing to say this stuff as a front office, and the more you act as if you don't even know the answer to this stuff.
Right.
The more you're leaving room for everyone to just come up with their own, presumptive answers. And those are not going to be good. No one hears a team president say, "Hey, I still got to talk to ownership. I don't know if we're going to have any money to spend. I don't know what this is," and thinks, "Oh, I bet they're going to have a $200 million payroll next year." What you hear is, "Oh, those are the words of a man who plans to not have much spending room." So that's why we obsess about this stuff. That's why every time we get an opportunity to ask Derek Falvey or Jeremy Zoll or whoever about this, we do it. And then that's why when they just kick the can down the road a month at a time, I half expect him at the GM meetings to be like, well, we don't usually sign guys till spring training anyway, so it's okay if we don't know if we have any room. There is some truth to that, unfortunately. Okay, before we talk about the coaching staff, let's talk about our next couple of sponsors here.
Prize Picks. Was it this weekend that I beat up on your fantasy football team, Aaron, or was that last weekend?
Yeah, it was the most recent game.
Okay, yeah. So you can, if you really know sports, you can just beat up on Aaron's team, but sometimes that gets old. And so what you want to do is, sometimes if you're like Aaron and you just didn't do a very good job in your draft, you might want to try doing some fantasy sports outside of that. And for that, we would recommend Prize Picks. If you go to download the Prize Picks apps, what you do is you go out there, and whether you want to pay attention to the NBA or the NFL or the NHL, or all the sports are going on right now, you can just go out there and take a look at a couple of different players. Say, I think JJ McCarthy is due for a breakout game. I think Aaron Jones is going to come back and have a monster couple runs. That's the sort of thing that you can figure out and put some money on with Prize Picks. All you do is you just identify a couple of those. Each of those turn into what they call a lineup. So you've got 2 or 3 of those players that you're kind of rooting for to succeed or to fail.
You just pick. Do I think he's gonna have more or less? That's
right. That's exactly
whatever
right.
the line is. That's it.
That's right.
And super easy. And I like to do it for basketball. John likes to do it for football. Yes. Like you said, though, they got all kinds of sports, everything up there every day. Prize Picks is the app.
So all you do is you download the Prize Picks apps today, and you use the code Gleeman, and you're going to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. You put $5 in there, and you're going to get $50. That's code Gleeman to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
Our next sponsor is Raycon, and Raycon Everyday Earbuds. I actually just sent one of these to my mom because she takes these long walks. This thing called exercise, I guess, that people do. And she loves Raycon, and you wear them. You guys wear them. I know when you go on runs, because the actual physical fit in the ear is really good. I like them because I don't leave the house, which means that A, the ease of pairing it to Bluetooth, and then B, the battery life. Those are the big things that I'm on because I'm wearing them for 7 hours at a time or whatever. And they pass all the tests for that too. They've been a long-time sponsor.
Yes. And they seem to have been getting better and better and better. I think we've been talking about these guys for a decade. And they're just really well-engineered earbuds that end up give a quick charge. 10 minutes gives you 90 minutes of playtime, up to 32 hours of battery life with the case. They now have something called awareness mode, and they just keep improving it. I think they've got their everyday earbuds classic now. Has a special deal. So if you go to buyraycon.com/Geeman, you can get 20% off everyday earbuds classic in honor of their anniversary. So go to buyraycon, BUYRAYCON.com/Gleeman, and you'll get 20% off your everyday earbuds.
Okay. Let's talk about the coaching staff.
Yeah.
So there's been some interesting stuff there. I would expect, very quickly we're going to see it filled out quite a bit more. We're already seeing that a little bit. So Dan Hayes and Bobby Nightingale both reported last night that LaTroy Hawkins is joining the staff as the bullpen coach, where he will be replacing Colby Suggs, whose contract was up, and it sounds like he might be headed to the Rangers, I think. Dan had reported on Hawkins being a viable candidate like a week and a half ago, and we discussed that.
Yeah.
He was at the press conference. So once I saw him at the press conference, I was like, okay. So it was an interesting press conference too, because I joked about this on the Patreon. We don't have to get into it. Scene setting, we did a lot of that at the Patreon, behind the scenes stuff. But I walk in, first person I see at Target Field's Joe Polad. Then I go into the press conference and I sit, and there's a couple seats to the right of me empty, and who sits down there but Dave St. Peter. Right behind me was Tom Kelly and Kent Herbeck, and then, like I said, Hawkins and Glenn Perkins, Justin Morneau, Corey Koski. A lot of alumni were there and everything. It's much like how we discuss managers, and maybe I feel a little more strongly about this than you, but I don't think anybody really knows how to predict if a manager will be good or not.
Yeah,
and I think
I feel the same way. Yeah,
and if you extend that even further, it's very hard to predict if a coach will be good. Do you know what I mean? it's how are you even evaluating that?
Right.
Like it's not like there's any metrics for a bullpen coach other than how the bullpen performs, which that's not really what they're doing. But then beyond that, like, okay, LaTroy Hawkins, on the surface, no one has more experience as a major league relief pitcher than LaTroy Hawkins. Like almost literally no one. He spent like, I think 19 seasons in a bullpen. He closed, he set up, he was on good teams, he was on bad teams, on and on and on. I think he's top 10 all time in appearances, something like that. Now, does that help you as a bullpen coach? Well, yeah. I mean, if you're talking to relievers and you are the reliever, they can say. Beyond that, just getting to know LaTroy a little bit over the years. He's been in spring trainings. He's done some coaching on the side for the Twins, but he's also been involved in the broadcast. So he's been around the team. He's been asking questions. He's been in the clubhouse. I have always found him, and this was definitely his reputation as a player. He's super smart, but he's not at all a nerd, which helps.
Yes,
he's very smart, but in sort of a way that he can communicate smoothly to people who aren't as smart or maybe aren't viewing it as valuable to be smart. Like he's just communicating big picture ideas in a way that is easily digestible. But then similar to what we were talking about with Shelton, LaTroy Hawkins is an old school dude, but he's smart enough and he's curious enough and sort of open-minded enough to, at the end of his career and now in retirement, to like information and analytics, and he wants data and he wants technology. And so the hope is, obviously, much like with Shelton, that you're taking an old school guy with endless experience as a player and some experience coaching in spring trainings. I know he coached a USA team.
Yeah.
And I think he coached maybe the Futures game one year, something like that. And you're hoping he can sort of meld together that old schoolness and that experience with his openness to new school stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And that has been my experience with Hawkins. That's how people talk about Hawkins behind the scenes. And so on the surface, you add all those things together, I don't know that you could draw up a more promising candidate to be a bullpen coach, right, than LaTroy Hawkins. With that said, do I know he's going to be a good bullpen coach?
Right, yeah.
I don't know. He might find he does it for a year and he decides, I don't want to do this anymore.
Well, it's similarly to the Shelton situation. Is it going to matter who the bullpen coach is next year?
Right.
There's enough big questions going on, especially about of all the areas. There's huge questions going on right now about the Minnesota Twins, roster makeup. Bullpen is number one at the top of the list. And, are they putting Hawkins in a situation where it ain't going to really matter how well he can manage or how well he can connect to the players or whether or not he can bring out the absolute best in each of these guys.
Yeah.
He might not have the tools to make it work. We'll see.
True. Yeah. I wonder if he was like, I'll take the bullpen job. Is there going to be a bullpen? Like,
am I pitching?
Yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah. You got an inning in you, LaTroy? I bet he does. He's good.
Yeah. I'll be the rubber arm. I'll be the 26th man.
Right. I mean, he's not that recently retired. He's he's still, it's not like he's gone. He hadn't put on any weight. He still looks good. Also, former Winter Meltdown guest.
Yes, you're right.
LaTroy Hawkins.
That's
long time ago. Here's what I'll say. Becky had a bunch of her friends that year come to the Meltdown before they realized like how boring it is if you don't care about baseball. But they were head over heels for LaTroy Hawkins. This was like a group of 30 to 40-year-old women. And, he's 6'6", good looking guy, former athlete. No, I think he was just a daddy at that point. Derek Shelton, Zaddy. We talked about that on the Patreon. We don't need to get back into that. But they were all like, I want to take a picture with LaTroy. And also he was a great guest.
Yes, he was.
Which is not surprising.
No.
I'm personally hoping, now that I will see him almost every day, that I can get some Taylor Swift gossip from him because his best friend is Pat Mahomes, his dad, Pat Mahomes.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
I've tried at various points over the last couple of years to be like, so what's going? And he's just like, shut up. Anyway, but Becky will not let me continue to live if I don't at least make an effort to anyone with a connection to Taylor Swift. But anyway, so my point on that is it seems like a great hire. And he also checks the box we were just talking about with Shelton, which if it's going to be a tough couple of years, who do you want in that foxhole taking fire?
Right.
LaTroy's a good guy to be with because he's a good guy. He's a smart guy. He's a nice guy. People like him. But I do think there's a chance if he likes coaching, if he likes the everyday grind of it, the travel of it versus, doing some games on TV and stuff, I mean, he could be a bullpen coach. He could be an assistant pitching, because here's the reality. It's called a bullpen coach. And, we joked about, don't blame the bullpen on him.
Right.
I mean, he is responsible for a lot of the bullpen in that he's going to specifically be working with relievers, and he's the guy who's literally going to answer the phone when it rings down there. And he's going to get guys ready. He's going to keep them loose. They're going to have routines that he's going to help establish. But the reality is a bullpen coach is just an assistant pitching coach.
Sure. Yeah.
So, not that the rest of the pitching staff is going to be that amazing if they trade a couple guys anyway. So that is the one that we know about that has joined the staff.
Yeah.
Now, then within that, I have heard from multiple people that the Twins would like James Rowson, who finished runner-up for this job and was also a finalist in 2019 when the job went to Baldelli. They would like James Rowson to be the bench coach. And he's very close to Shelton also. So I think, in a lot of situations, you finish runner-up for a job and they say, would you like to be this guy's assistant?
Well, F this guy.
Except
yeah,
Shelton
exactly.
took the bench coach job from Baldelli. So it could be kind of history repeating. The question there is, he's the Yankees hitting coach and he's under contract. Are they going to let him take that job when it's not a 2-level jump, basically? So I don't know about that. They would like James Rowson. And to me, if they were able to bring in Rowson, who I think was probably a more intriguing candidate, in the familiarity pool of candidates, and he's your right-hand man, I like that a lot as a duo. But we'll see about that. The current bench coach, or the recent bench coach, under Baldelli, Jace Tingler, we've talked for weeks now that he was not expected back with the Twins. I think we made that pretty clear, obviously.
Yep.
He's taking a job with the Giants. It sounds like he'll be the bench coach, but I haven't seen that officially.
Yeah, me neither.
The Giants' new manager was maybe the most outside the box hire of the entire cycle, which was Tony Vitello, who's the University of Tennessee coach and has no professional coaching experience whatsoever. He's hired with the Giants, and he played baseball at Missouri with Jace Tingler.
Yes, that's right.
And so that's why he's bringing in.
I think one of the reasons we didn't expect Tingler back for several weeks is as soon as Vitello got named to San Francisco, everybody kind of figured Jace Tingler would end up in San Francisco. So
yes, and a lot of times, like we saw with Shelton, when it seems pretty obvious in baseball, a lot of times it plays out that way. Although I will say, it's my understanding that that Tingler had multiple bench coach offers.
Sure, I believe that.
I won't say what, but
he was the former Padres manager, right? That was So I mean, he's certainly qualified for
and when
any of those places.
When he became the Padres manager, 7 years ago or whatever it was, he was a very similar story to Shelton at that point, where former player in the minors immediately went into coaching, grinded his way up, very well respected, all that stuff. I will miss Jace Tingler, largely because he and I together made fun of Dan Hayes a lot.
You still have me. I'm still around, Aaron.
True, but you can never have enough people willing to make fun of Dan Hayes. So the other coach who will definitely not be coming back is Hank Conger, who I think his official title was assistant bench coach, but then also catching coordinator or something like that. He had been the first base coach, but moved out of that because he has gout and couldn't stay on his feet that much. He is not coming back. It sounds like that was a Twins decision. I will say Hank Conger is probably one of my favorite people I've met in baseball. Just always in a good mood. I actually first liked him because he was very good at making fun of Do-Hyun Park.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Because they're both Korean, so he would make fun of him in Korean specific ways that no one else could. Right. And I was like, this is amazing. One time he walked in, he saw Do's haircut. Do had gotten like a perm, and he called him something I will never forget. Well, I can't say it on the free show, but anyway, Hank Conger was super well liked. I like talking about early 2000s wrestling with him specifically. But this is one of those situations where I could have seen him being the bench coach under Shelton. He was assistant bench coach with the Twins. That was kind of the trajectory I think he was on with the Twins. But also, you're looking at a coaching staff that's, 9, 10 deep or whatever it is. If they keep like the pitching side of things, you bring in LaTroy Hawkins to be the bullpen coach.
Right.
There are only so many spots that you can sort of mold as your own if you're Derek Shelton, or for that matter, bring in some outside voices who are not part of the downward trajectory of the last couple of years for the Twins. And I think, unfortunately, someone like Conger gets cut in that spot where it's like, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed to me everyone really liked Conger. No one thought he did a poor job, but that's a key role and it's a head count situation. And so I think I'm hopeful. My guess is he'll latch on pretty quickly with a major league team. And then also,
I'm a little, he's the one I'm probably most surprised is
me
not
too.
returning. Yeah.
And then these are former Twins coaches, but just to put a bow on this, Derek Shelton, who had been in 2023 and 2024, was the assistant hitting coach who worked along under David Popkins. He was fired after 2024 along with Popkins and Rudy Hernandez when they redid the whole hitting. He is now the White Sox hitting coach. He spent last season, I think, as the Marlins assistant hitting coach, and now he's the White Sox hitting coach. So you're going to see him a lot in the division. And then Jeremy Hefner, who was on that 2019 staff as the assistant pitching coach with Shelton and Rousen and Baldelli and all those guys. He left at that same time to become the Mets pitching coach.
Oh, right.
But was just fired as the Mets pitching coach and is now the Atlanta Braves pitching coach. So there's just some former things. That's the thing we've seen with the Twins. Not as much lately, but like coming off 2019, obviously, they had so many guys poached, not only from the major league coaching staff, but behind the scenes guys, player development guys, minor league coaches. And I wonder how much of constantly having to churn and having to bring in new guys, having to always have ideas for a good replacement.
Right.
If you just run out of ideas, or if you miss on a couple, it kind of compounds itself. And I mean, we saw, despite the success of the Terry Ryan Gardenhire era, where they won 6 division titles, the front office and the coaching staff were almost never poached.
Right. Yeah.
One or two every few years. Yep. And I always thought that stood out in an interesting way, where it was like they're winning, but no one seems to think they have like a secret sauce here that they're sort of impacting winning. Whereas the Twins recently haven't done that much winning other than 2019, but they're just constantly having guys poached. And maybe that's just the nature of the industry. There's more changeover year after year. I'm not sure about that, but
that's an interesting point.
Let's before we finish up with some roster house cleaning, and then we're also going to update you guys on our over under picks from preseason.
Yeah.
Let's do our last couple sponsors here.
Starting with BetterHelp. We like BetterHelp. BetterHelp is if you're working through some stuff and you've gotten to the point where you want to talk to somebody about your own mental health, right? You want to talk to a therapist about anything. It can be hard to get to that point where you are ready to talk out loud to another person about some of these things and commit yourself to that journey. And what makes it harder is, where do you even start? How do I find a good therapist? How do I free up time on my schedule? Where do I have to drive to on a regular basis to talk to somebody or whatever, right? That's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp, once you have made the commitment, it is time for me to go do this, BetterHelp can step in and just make it so easy for you.
Yeah, they can set you up with a real licensed therapist. They can tailor it with what you're comfortable with. You want to do a video call? Sure. You don't want to be on camera? You do a phone call. If you're like me and you hate phone calls, you just text back and forth with somebody. And they can do it typically within a few days. If you don't like it, you can switch to a different therapist. It's very flexible. And, this month, don't wait to reach out. Whether you're checking in on a friend, reaching out to a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it easier to take that first step. Our listeners can get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/Gleeman. That's better, HELP, betterhelp.com/Gleeman. If you've been thinking about talking to someone, very few barriers for entry for this. Do it today, because you might wake up tomorrow and not think you're ready to do it again. Betterhelp.com/Gleeman. And then our last sponsor.
Speaking of removing barriers, if you're a guy who is working through some stuff that you're maybe a little self-conscious about, for instance, ED or weight loss or hair loss in particular, we would suggest you check out Hims, especially they're kind of highlighting on our podcast. They're highlighting the hair loss. I don't know why. I don't know why they picked us to talk
It's a
about that.
real mystery, John, especially the timing of us going on YouTube a few months ago. And they were like, we would like to sponsor this show specifically.
Don't look like these two schmoes.
Yeah. I'm looking good today.
They offer convenient access to a range of prescription hair loss treatments with ingredients that work, including chews or oral medications, serums, sprays, etc. Their doctor-trusted, clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil can stop further hair loss and regrow your hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. And you shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. Hims brings the expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. No hidden fees, no surprise costs, just personalized care on your schedule. So for simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/Gleeman. That's hims.com/Gleeman for your free online visit. hims.com/Gleeman. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for details, restrictions, and important safety information.
Okay. Let's talk about some actual player stuff here. So, as is the case around this time for every team, every offseason, World Series ends, the baseball calendar sort of kicks from 2025 to 2026. Once that happens, you need to remove players from the 60-day injured list, which has shielded them from needing 40-man roster spots. And also teams just clean up their roster heading into the offseason. And you typically, it depends on the team and kind of the state of the roster, but typically most teams, you got somewhere between 3 and 10 guys who get immediately dumped from the 40-man roster. Guys who had been called up at the end of the season as injury replacements, but aren't viewed as major leaguers or, whatever it is. You also then have your exiting free agents who depart the 40-man roster. In the Twins case, the only one of those who wasn't traded at the deadline already was Christian Vasquez.
Right.
So he leaves the 40-man roster. So we're going to go through the half dozen or so guys who were cut from the 40-man roster in the first round of house cleaning. Looking at the rest of the 40-man roster, it's possible we see a couple more names maybe here in the coming days who are trying to pass through waivers and that sort of thing. But these are, we're kind of the lowest hanging fruit here that they got rid of yesterday. So we can just go through them here. So only what was interesting, and we'll read these names. Let's see. We have 6 total names who were, in addition to Vasquez, who were dropped from the 40-man roster.
Right.
They were placed on waivers. What's interesting is only one of the 6 was claimed off waivers by another team. And it's probably not the name anybody would have guessed out of the 6.
Or could pronounce.
Yeah. Cody Larson. I think I'm even saying that wrong, but whatever. This might be the last time I have to botch his name. Was claimed off waivers by the Anaheim Angels or the Los Angeles Angels. He's a 27-year-old former starter turned reliever. Made his major league debut for the Twins in mid-September when they just needed bullpen arms that were living and breathing and throwing. He had broken through a little bit the last year or two at AA and AAA to the point that he at least looked like a possible call-up.
He was a spring training invitee, as I recall. He was down there in Fort Myers, I think.
Yeah. But here's how you know he wasn't in their plans. They had to fill like 50 bullpen spots on August 1st.
Right, yeah.
And he wasn't called up until September 13th.
Right, yeah.
And he pitched okay. I mean, he pitched pretty well for 5 appearances. I think he threw 7 2/3 innings. I think he only allowed 1 or 2 runs. Threw strikes, pitched okay, looked, competent, all that. But, if they viewed Larson as someone who was going to be in next year's bullpen, they would have called him up on August 13th, not September 13th.
Right.
And so I think people watched him a few times and were like, oh, this guy's not bad. You look at his minor league numbers, not bad. And by the way, there are so many guys who are stuck at AAA or only get a brief opportunity in the majors and are passed along the waiver wire and signed to minor league deals, who absolutely, if you just said to them, you have 3 years in a major league bullpen, a very high percentage of those guys would look like competent middle relievers.
Sure, yeah.
And I have no doubt that he's, potentially capable of that. And it is kind of interesting to see the Twins lose any bullpen talent whatsoever in a spot where,
Yes.
like we talked about, they don't really have a bullpen. But I think this just speaks to the fact that, prior to calling him up for the last 2 weeks, they didn't really view him as part of the plan. They were trying to shed him off the roster and maybe stash him back at AAA. The Angels, who also need bullpen help, picked him up. He was the only one claimed. So he's a goner. He's with the Angels. And then the 5 guys who were dropped from the 40-man roster and passed through waivers on claim, which means none of the 29 other teams viewed them as worth grabbing.
Right.
And all it would have taken, by the way, to grab them is whatever the waiver wire fee, which is thousands, whatever it is, and just sticking them on the 40-man roster. And here's the names. I'll start, Anthony Masevich, not a surprise. He was injured for most of the time with the Twins. Michael Tonkin, not a surprise. He was arbitration eligible for like $1.5 million. They weren't going to keep him, obviously. Genesis Cabrera, who was one of the placeholder veterans they called up after the trade deadline. He was arbitration eligible for like $1.5 million. We talked weeks ago. They were never going to keep him. Thomas Hatch, who was maybe the most placeholder of placeholders after the trade deadline. They just had him, whether it was starts or bullpen appearances, just eat innings basically as a 30-something-year-old journeyman. He was dropped. And then the name that everyone's going to focus on, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about, Jose Miranda. And, it would have seemed inconceivable 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even like 15 months ago.
A year and a half ago. Yeah. Yeah.
That Miranda would even be in a position where this was plausible, and B, that the Twins would be like, we're just ready to move on from him. But the reality is, he had a great first half last season, in 2024. Then he had a possible concussion, missed some time with back problems, was pretty brutal in the second half of 2024.
Yeah.
Still got an opening day job for this season. Didn't play much, but really struggled. Hit like 150 I think he had like 15 strikeouts and no walks or something like that. Had been phased out of the immediate plans. They demote him to AAA in like mid to late April. Yeah. He has that weird injury where he went to the Target in St. Paul to like stock up on water. I'm assuming for like his apartment or whatever with the Saints. And he like dropped it and tried to catch it and strained his arm or hurt his hand or whatever.
Right.
And I know that's, that adds some sort of weirdness. And like, was that part of his struggles?
Right.
But the other thing is he played pretty much every day for the Saints, was not injured really at any point in terms of not being available for them for like 4 months, 5 months in a row. I mean, he played like 100 games for the Saints. And not only was he bad, he was the Saints' worst hitter for the entire season, and one of the either 5 or 10 lowest OPS and batting average in the entire AAA International League. Right. And we're talking about a guy who's still like 26, 27 years old.
Right.
Theoretically, he was healthy. He's a guy who's had major league success. I mean, like long stretches where he's been one of the, a very good high batting average, decent power type of hitter. And to see him go to AAA after struggling down the stretch 2 years ago, struggling to open this season, and then just not even be a competent AAA hitter.
Not even hit 200.
Yes, and not like he was hitting for power. And I mean, he wasn't controlling the strike zone. Right. He wasn't hitting for average. He wasn't hitting for power. We know he's not much of a defender, obviously. And it got to the point where once they didn't call him, like even Eddie Julian, whose timeline was not that dissimilar, but who at least performed okay at AAA, was called up for August and September when they needed warm bodies after the trade deadline. Miranda was not. And, we saw Austin Martin called up. We saw Deshaun Kersey recalled. We saw Julian. Like, they were just giving opportunities to almost anybody.
Right.
But not Miranda.
Did not. Yeah.
And so at that point, the writing was on the wall. The other thing that plays a part in Miranda is he is out of minor league options now.
Right. So he can't be sent back to AAA next year.
Right. If he would have to make the opening day roster out of spring training, or they can't just option him to AAA like they have in years past.
Right.
He would have to be exposed to the waiver wire first. Now, as we just learned, he passed through unclaimed on waivers. So it's possible he would have passed through unclaimed during spring training, although if he has a good spring training and he looks healthy, who knows? Roster situations are different in spring training than they are now. Teams are trying to get their rosters heading into the offseason. They're trying to pare it down as far as they possibly can so that they can make trades and signings and add guys who need protection for the Rule 5 drafts. You're trying to get it kind of as tight as you can get it to begin the offseason. And so I think the Twins now are at, 33?
33 total.
On their
yep.
40-man roster.
So they've got 7 spots, right?
Maybe we'll see 1 or 2 more dropped, whatever the case. And obviously, if somebody's traded, that removes them from the 40-man roster. But so that played a part in Miranda too, because you say to yourself, have we given up on this guy? Obviously, the answer is yes. But even if you had some kind of flickering light of belief in Jose Miranda, do you want to keep him on the 40-man roster all offseason? You could. I mean,
right.
I don't think they're going to have that tight of a 40-man roster because they're in a situation talent-wise.
Right.
And it's not like they're going to go out and sign 10 prominent free agents or something. You could absolutely keep Jose Miranda on the 40-man roster. I mean, they're probably going to do that with Eddie Julian, who is also out of options, and I don't think a very good bet to make the opening day roster next year. But he's a little bit there's a little bit more belief left in him. But what's the point of keeping him on the 40-man roster throughout the offseason and spring training if realistically, unless there are a rash of injuries at the end of spring training, he's not going to be on your opening day roster? I mean, right. And then you're just sort of kicking the can down the road on this decision. And it's, by the way, it's also possible. So all those guys, Masevich, Tonkin, Cabrera, Hatch, and Jose Miranda are all now just straight up free agents. They've effectively been released from the Twins. You could attempt to re-sign those guys to just normal minor league deals. Like they could sign Miranda, let's say, to a minor league contract, plan for him to be at AAA, with the big difference being he's no longer taking a 40-man roster spot. Right. Although the danger there is he could be picked in the Rule 5 draft, but I don't really see that being plausible either.
Yeah, that's what. So we should mention this was one. This roster cleanup that they're doing here. This is something that all teams do right at the beginning of the offseason because you need space on that 40-man roster for Rule 5, the guys that you want to protect from the Rule 5 draft, and guys who are going to become free agents that you want to acquire or trades that you want to acquire, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's why they're going and doing this.
My guess is, like, if Jose Miranda were to text me and say, who is this? I don't know who you are, but I'm for some reason texting. Right. My cousin Lin-Manuel told me you're cool. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what happened.
And if he was like, hey, the Twins, they dropped me from the 40-man. I passed through waivers unclaimed. I'm a free agent. The Twins have offered me just a standard minor league contract. Do you think I should take it? I would say absolutely not. Right. And it's not, first of all, I think there's reason to be skeptical of the Twins' ability to turn around a struggling young hitter. But beyond that,
right,
go get a fresh start somewhere, brother.
Yeah,
I mean, just, go somewhere where I don't think he's going to be promised major league roster spot or certainly not playing time. Go somewhere where you have a connection to a coach or they have laid out a specific plan for weaknesses that they think they can address. Go. This is your chance because if he returns to the Twins, let's say, and struggles again at AAA, that could be it for him. And if he goes somewhere and makes a poor choice of where to go next, and they just kind of mothball him and put him at AAA and he hits 250 or whatever, I mean, your career at that point has lost all momentum. No one cares that 3 years ago you had some promise. This next kind of step in his path, whether it's a AAA deal elsewhere or whether it's going to Japan or Korea or something like that to get playing time and kind of, recoup your value, this is a big decision for him. And, maybe it's too late. Maybe he's lost some skill or there's been some injury. I know his shoulder, his back, concussion, the thing with the water at Target, maybe he's physically just not what he once was.
The drop off is so dramatic and so fast. It feels like there's got to be a story there, right? It can't just be, I just lost it. There's got to be, it feels like there's got to be something that we can point to, but it is not clear what anybody can point to.
And I asked around about that, and I know people who cover St. Paul have asked Miranda about that. Like, is something wrong? Like, what is wrong? And it's my understanding he has said nothing. Physically he's fine. So disappointing. I mean, I don't know that we were quite as high at the highest points of Miranda mania, let's call it.
Right, sure.
I think we were a little skeptical just because he didn't have top of the line power. He was more of like a 15-20 homer guy, and his plate discipline has always been pretty terrible.
Sure.
So I think we viewed him more as like a secondary core piece. Like, he's a good number 5 hitter, number 6 hitter. He's not a top of the order guy you build around. But I mean, we'd be lying if we tried to, in retrospect, act like he didn't have a lot of promise. I mean, he did.
That consecutive hit streak that he had in mid-July last year, right? Or beginning of July last year, before the All-Star break last year, did make me think, this guy could be something. He's got a unique set of skills. He's just, he's not as traditional in terms of, the things that sabermetric people tend to appreciate, whether it's plate discipline or such, but he's can really the dude can hit a baseball. And I was pretty optimistic about him heading into that point, and that's why I find the drop off to be so dramatic. It kind of bums me out.
And I think, it's not just that hitting streak, which you mentioned, hits in 12 consecutive at bats, which tied the major league record. I believe that was my most read story of last season.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it.
And it wasn't even that good of a story. It was like 3 paragraphs of like,
wow.
But he finished that first half hitting like 330 or something like that. He had months long stretches in prior seasons of that, but then he had also had injuries, and he'd also had stretches where he struggled in the second half, and no longer being viewed as a viable third baseman kind of hurt him, I think, although he could fill in there. So then he was like first base DH, where the bar for offense is a little higher. It's hard if you don't have significant power. But no, let's not try to paint this any other way. Like, I really viewed him as he was really young. He had success in the majors. It seemed like a fairly straightforward approach of good contact skills, line drive swing, ability to use the whole field. I thought, this guy could hit 280 with 15, 20 homers a year for the next 5 years and be a number 5.
Eddie Rosario came to mind when I thought of him.
Rosario, a lot more power,
right? Yes,
and a lot better defense.
Well, you're right,
but sort of a secondary good hitter, not a star hitter, but the type of hitter that a good lineup is going to have several of.
Right. Yeah.
And it just vanished for him, and so it's disappointing. He's certainly among the examples. Like I said, Julian is an example. Kirilloff, that was a lot of injury based, but guys like Larnach, where they just, Wallner to some extent, Brooks Lee now, Royce Lewis, they just have not taken steps forward and too often have taken steps back. And in almost every case, there's injuries linked to this.
Yeah.
But the Twins just haven't been able to take promising young hitters and turn them into consistently good veteran hitters.
Yeah, you're right.
And that might be the story of their, last 18 months or whatever. And Miranda's, at the forefront of that. So it's unfortunate. I don't have a lot of faith in him turning it around, but I do think he will certainly get AAA opportunities, spring training invites. And I think this next decision for him of where do I want to try to get back on track is so crucial for him.
Yep.
So we'll see. Couple other things. And it's probably a wake-up call that 29 other teams didn't even put in a waiver claim.
That is interesting, because though if the difference between him getting that waiver versus going the free agent route is he would also be out of options with those new teams. He has to be on the roster like that. I'm just kind of explaining it to the listeners that is why the other 29 other teams passed for the same reason the Twins felt that they could put him on waivers. In part that we can't guarantee he's going to have a roster spot.
But if you're a bad team and you want to take a flyer on him, the 40-man roster spot over the winter is not that. Let's say the Pittsburgh Pirates, who's always our example, which is now it is funny that on this show, I feel like we have used the Pittsburgh Pirates as sort of the example of where things can go wrong for the last 10 years. And now the Twins just hired the guy who managed them. But anyway, couple other things. Not official yet, although it probably will be shortly. I was told that the Twins are declining Justin Topa's $2 million option for next year.
Okay.
However, that's an odd situation in that all that does is it pays him a $225,000 buyout instead of a $2 million option, but then he just reverts to being arbitration eligible. And his projection from MLB trade rumors as an arbitration eligible player is $1.7 million. So technically, if you pay a guy a $225,000 buyout and then you sign him, let's say for $1.7 million, that's $1.925 million, which saves you $75,000 over a $2 million thing. Now, is it worth all that hassle for $75,000? Well, I've done some things for $75,000. But, this podcast, let's say.
You have not.
No, that's true.
You never. It also, I mean, it could also be that the Twins' internal projections on taking a closer look at those arbitration cases. You know, you might say, well, we're probably going to come in at closer to 1.6, 1.5.
This is what someone said to me. I asked about it yesterday. MLB Trade Rumors does a really good job. It's almost like a public service to guys like us.
Sure.
And I know teams look at it too, where they have a system in place that they've been doing for over a decade, where they post arbitration salary projections for dozens and dozens of players, every offseason. And they've got it to like a science almost, like, because it's all based on service time, position, age, health, and numbers. And they've sort of cracked the code, but it's very accurate in a big picture. Like if you take 100 projections, the correlation to what those 100 guys will get cumulatively is very, very close. Like MLB Trade Rumors nails it. But on an individual basis, it can certainly vary by 10 or 20%. And that's what we're talking about here is, 10% is 200,000.
Right.
And I was told from the Twins perspective that even if they want to keep Topa, which I suspect they will via arbitration, because again, who else do they have in the bullpen? And 1.7 million for even middle relievers, real cheap. They can try to negotiate with them and say, will you take 1.5? Will you take 1.4? Right. And if the choice is saying yes to that, or being released and being a free agent and having to go find more than that on the open market, some relievers especially will agree to that. But so that Topa, if you see in the coming days that they officially declined his option, do not read into that it's a typical option decline. All he does
that he's now a free agent.
Right. He's just reverted to arbitration eligibility, which they can choose to tender him a contract or non-tender him. The deadline for that is 2 weeks from now, something like that.
Something like that. It's like usually like November 19th or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And so like we said, the 40-man roster now I believe is down to 33. It's possible there's one or two more cuts that they try to pass through waivers here in the coming days. But I looked at it actually right before we started. It's pretty pared down. I mean, you got some guys like Johnny Pareda, Mickey Gasper, Carson McCusker, who I viewed him as kind of marginal from the Twins perspective. It's possible some guys like that get dropped here. But 33, and you can drop those guys later, obviously.
The pitching side is pretty pared down.
Yes.
There's not a lot of fat left on the pitching side. It's just a matter of whether or not some of those hitting ones are going to be making it through. We'll see.
Actually, I think there isn't anybody I would view as even have a 50-50 chance of being cut from the pitching side.
I agree.
Okay. Before we finish with our recap of our terrible over-under picks, let me just a couple random things. Falvey said after the press conference that Pablo Lopez is fully healthy after he tweaked his shoulder on that diving defensive play, and will have a normal offseason, which is good news.
Yep.
And he also said that David Festa is healthy, has avoided thoracic outlet syndrome surgery, got the injection, they untrapped the nerve, however that works. I don't think he's started throwing yet, but it sounds like he's relatively close to starting throwing again. And the expectation, according to Fulvey, is that he will be fully ready for spring training, which is great. That would
be fantastic.
Now, setbacks happen and all that, but at least from this point, two other small things. Ty France won the Gold Glove at first base, which means back-to-back years the Twins' first baseman won the Gold Glove because Carlos Santana won it. He was definitely better than I anticipated. And he promised that in spring training. He basically said, I'm not as bad as I looked last year. I broke my foot last year. I was terrible. Right. He made some nice plays. He didn't ever strike me as like a Gold Glove first baseman, but I mean, Santana, who's 41, was one of the other finalists for it. So it's like, first bases. It is what it is. I thought that was interesting. And then the other thing, Harrison Bader predictably declined his half of the mutual option with the Phillies. And we had talked when the Twins signed Bader, it was a weird contract because it was a 1-year, $6.25 million deal with like a $10 or $11 million mutual option for 2026. But as we say a lot on this show over the years, if you see a mutual option, assume it will be declined.
Right.
And in fact, I always say I can't remember the last time a mutual option was picked up, not just the Twins, but across baseball. It's effectively just window dressing for a guy becoming a free agent. Someone looked this up. I should have saved it. It was on Twitter. There has only been 7 mutual options picked up in the last 20 years of free agency.
Okay.
Which, that's about
amazing.
right.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
they were some pretty low profile, like, $1 million bench player type of guys where it's
Right.
just like, okay. So anyway, he's a free agent.
Yeah, there's something probably like about 10 of those per year that you see, and that one every 3 years gets picked up. So yeah, I guess that's about 3% of them, 97%. Yeah,
something like that. Because I know when we talked at the deadline, there were a few people who reached out with questions, like mailbag questions and stuff. It's like, well, yeah, they're trading Bader because they view him as an impending free agent, but he's got this mutual option for next year. Like, why didn't they just pick up the mutual option and keep him for next year? Well, because he had the ability,
because it's mutual,
after a very good season, to
right.
go decline it and go get paid, which I would expect him to do. And then the last thing, speaking of the market and free agency and stuff, I don't know if you've been paying that much attention, but like the two very early trends in terms of options and that sort of thing that I've seen, one is that teams are declining options in the $6 to $10 million range for good setup men, which I found kind of interesting. There's been 2 or 3 of those where my assumption was like, and I just did the big board top 50 for the Athletic, where we ranked these guys with a lot of assumption of who will be a free agent. And there were a couple we had to delete or add where it was like, ooh, I thought that guy, an $8 million option for that setup man, I thought that'd be picked up. Teams have been declining those, which is interesting because it tells me teams expect the free agent reliever market to be pretty saturated.
Okay.
They expect guys to be available for less than 8, 9, 10 million, which is good news for the Twins because they don't have much money to spend and they're going to need to sign at least 2 or 3 relievers. And then the other thing, which I think goes similarly, is Jack Flaherty picked up his $20 million option to stay with the Tigers instead of hitting free agency. And much more shockingly, Shane Bieber, after a good postseason coming back from Tommy John for the Blue Jays, he picked up his $16 million option to stay with the Blue Jays. Now, some of that might be the euphoria of making the World Series with a new team, and he's like, I loved it here, I want to stay. But we projected, and I think MLB Trade Rumors and Fangraphs projected similar. Everyone was assuming Bieber would decline that $16 million option to become a free agent. That was the whole premise of signing a deal coming off Tommy John, is if I have a healthy, good return, I'll go get paid. But then also he was pretty damn good down the stretch for the Blue Jays. And we projected him to get like a 3-year deal worth like 20-something million a year. And I know other places projected similar. So the fact that, and maybe it's just he loved Toronto and World Series, but the fact that Flaherty took $20 million instead of trying his hand at free agency, and the fact especially that Bieber took $16 million over what, I mean, there was zero chance of him not getting more than $16 million as a free agent. And then you fold in, like I said, the couple of declined options on relievers. It makes me start to think that there's people around baseball on the player side, agent side, and also the team front office side that expect spending to be down in free agency this year, which it's plausible to me or logical to me for a couple of reasons. One, there's just a lot of teams like the Twins who are just not spending. And then beyond that, you have the looming potential of a lockout for long-term contracts, which makes teams less willing to go beyond 1-2 years because it's like, we don't even know if there's going to be a 2027 season. And then beyond that, what the collective bargaining and the salary cap and the luxury tax and all that is going to be. And so I wonder, you also have the crashing of the local television revenue market for a lot of teams. And so I wonder if teams are preparing for a more buyer-friendly overall free agency. And there also aren't just a lot of like superstars available, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
And then I wonder if that has that assumption has made its way to the agent side of things, who are now advising players, take that $20 million option, get $20 million and we'll revisit this.
There's a lot of discussion on sort of the side of the press conference about, what is the upcoming CBA negotiations and is it expected to impact the offseason.
By the way, I believe Derek Falvey, his answer to one of those was, if any of you guys know, please tell me.
Yeah, exactly right. His answer was basically, we get these new CBA things happening all the time, and in general, it doesn't change much. In general, it doesn't change people's strategy much. The CBA might change, but in general, it doesn't change the overall trend, the way the industry moves. But on the side, you were kind of like, will teams, especially teams that have, pretty high payrolls, will they be taking a look and saying, we're actually going to be fighting for a salary cap. We don't want to get caught too far over that salary cap and have to make some drastic moves. But we also I presume it would be phased in, like it would be that sort of thing, right?
It would definitely. But even then, if you're the Dodgers, do you want to go sign, I don't know, Kyle Tucker to a 10-year, $300 million deal? Because even if it's phased in over the course of 2 or 3 years, you're going to be left with a bunch of big salaries that maybe don't work as well.
So the other thought process was that it might be a bigger impact from the player side. And that's why, so when we projected our free agent pitchers, we had Flaherty on the edge. We weren't sure. He was one of 2 guys that we really just weren't sure which way they were going to go on it. But we had Bieber absolutely opting out of his contract and doing that. And part of my thought process after that discussion was, you don't want to be a free agent next offseason. You want to have a 3-year deal locked in before the CBA expires. Because if things do change on that and you end up with a salary cap or something, you're going to want to have the locked in stuff that you had.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not trying, $60 million is a lot of money, and Shane Bieber's already made tens of millions of dollars.
Sure.
And if you love working somewhere,
sure.
But here's the reality.
You can just make a personal discussion, right? Yeah.
He could have gotten more money from the Blue Jays if he wanted.
Probably.
And maybe that's in the works. Maybe it was I'll accept this and we'll extend it or something like that. We'll see. But we're not talking about a guy who was in line for $22 million and took $60 million. We're talking about a guy who was maybe in line for $100 million.
Right.
If the market was good. So just something to watch, something to keep an eye on for the Twins. The Twins benefit theoretically if the market is sort of buyer friendly and the prices are down a little bit. But again,
only if they lean into actually spending some money, right? It would be a perfect time to zig if everybody else is zagging on that particular piece. But there's no evidence that the Twins are going to do anything different.
Speaking of zigzags, and what happens to your mind when you use zigzag? I don't know why I feel like I'm like Ross Perot. I have a pen and I'm like, no new taxes. Read my. Was that him? No, that wasn't
Bob.
Was that him?
Bob Cole. No. Well, who was the Dole? Bob Dole.
Oh yeah,
Bob Dole.
No taxes. No. It's my impression. I was just telling we were watching Real Housewives.
It's a real ringer for Bob Dole for sure.
we were watching Real Housewives last night, which we watch every night because that's my brain is mush and I watch that. And there's a lady on there named Kyle Richards, and she does impressions of all the other housewives, and they're hilarious. I love impressions. One of the most surefire ways to entertain me is to do any kind of decent impression about a celebrity or specifically a John Bonus impression. I love it.
Okay.
I am so abysmal at impressions. I have no ear for impressions, and it really makes me mad because I feel like I would like to be a guy who can do funny impressions. And really the only one I can do is Patrick Royce, which is the impression 101 impression. That's the first day of impression class. They go, all right, there's this 80-year-old guy who kind of talks like this. Do that impression. And beyond that, I can't do another impression. So anyway.
The Power Trip Morning Show will regularly ask people to do impressions, and it's terrible. It's just terrible to be.
Bad. Every time I forget how bad I am, and then in my head I'm like, oh, I can do an impression of this person, and then it's just people are like, what are you doing? Bob Dole? Was that Bob Dole? What? So anyway, point my pen.
Point your pen.
Okay, let's finish here with if that last 90 seconds didn't convince you of how stupid I am, these next several minutes will. John has compiled, I believe, the results of our spring training annual over-under episode where we go through the American League teams as sort of a way to preview the season. And we take the Vegas over-unders for wins for each team, and we each pick over or under on the win total from Vegas. And then some of them that we feel particularly strongly about, we say we would bet on it or double down on it. So 2 from each division, we kind of say these are the ones we feel strongly about. So theoretically, you should have an even better record with the ones you feel strongly about.
Correct. Yeah.
I see theoretically. Now, I have intentionally not gone through here, so I do not know what my record out of 15 or your record for this season. I just know it's terrible because I remember how I felt about, especially the AL Central and things like that.
I know it's really bad. It could be really, really bad. Like, so we'll see.
So I will say this to people. We're welcome to go through this. It's entertaining to go back and listen to that episode in March. We do it every year, and we always give our impressions about what we think is going to happen, what we don't think is going to happen. I did that over yesterday as I kind of went through the results to kind of hear why we ended up picking the way we did on a lot of that stuff and what our impressions were of various teams and how different you forget how different your perception is of teams prior to the season beginning, prior to 6 months worth of evidence of what's going on.
It's like everybody's got a plan until they got punched in the face. Everybody thinks they know how a team's going to be until one pitch is thrown, and then you go, "Oh, actually, they stink." Or whatever.
All right, so we're gonna start kind of going reverse order of how we covered them in the March episode. We're gonna start with the Twins. The Twins their number was 83.5. Our discussion was a lot about which team are they? Are the team that finished real poorly, or are they team that was pretty good before that and made the playoffs before that? That was the big estimate, and ultimately. You ended up, the number was 83.5, which was the highest number in the AL Central, but it was also tied for the highest number in the AL Central. Like that was the high win. That was the high watermark.
I believe I said I picked them for 84 wins.
I think you thought it was going to be closer to 85, but yes, you were.
So it was
and I had 82. And so we basically split the difference, but both of us kind of threw up our hands at this. And we force ourselves to bet on it.
So the reason you see there that it says gun, and you might be thinking, what? That is John's way of saying those picks are the gun to your head. You have to pick every.
You have to pick. You have to go one way or the other on these. But these are the ones that you would actually bet.
The one that says bet is, like I said, the ones we feel particularly strong about, and we make ourselves feel strongly about the Twins just every year.
That's right.
Why would we not? So yes, John has. If we stop right now, you look brilliant.
That's right. Yeah,
you were correct about the team that we both cover, which is, after all, the main goal.
Right.
You were correct. I was incorrect. They missed it by 13.5. Not real close.
By the way, that was the biggest miss. The worst team with respect to their expected results in the American League.
That makes sense.
The Twins were the biggest disappointment in the American League, which is not shocking. Their manager gets fired.
Right, exactly. Right, I would like to see, setting aside like first-year managers or even maybe second-year managers, the list of like the top 50 biggest gaps between preseason over/under and actual win total. I would guess like 2/3 of those guys got fired, probably. Honestly, okay.
So that was the first one. Second,
John was correct. I was incorrect. Yeah.
Second in the AL Central was supposed to be the Detroit Tigers, who also had a number of 83.5. We both took a look at this team, and again, we were pretty much split on. We both thought 83.5 was a really good number, and we weren't really sure which way to go on it. They had not really done anything to improve themselves much in the offseason. Similar to the Twins, only the exact opposite. They had a great end of the season, but not a great beginning of the season. And this 83.5 looked like it was going to be over the entire season, but then they did the exact opposite that they did last year, which is they fell apart in August and September. That made it fairly close, but the truth is that they ended up with 87 wins, which is an easy over. Yeah. And so they exceeded it. And so that's where we're at now with I got that over, you got it under. And I got that one right.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. Yeah, AL Central was your weak point, to be honest.
I don't know. There wasn't a strong point.
There were stronger points. How about that? Cleveland, 82.5. We both loved Cleveland in terms of over on this one, and I even put a bet on it. And sure enough, Cleveland ended up charging back at the end of the year, getting 88 wins, winning the AL Central. And that overperformed by 5.5 games. And so that one we both get credit for. I get credit for it both as a gun to my head and also as a one I would bet on.
All right. Maybe I should do a Guardians podcast.
All right, there you should. Kansas City Royals. We both took a look at what they had done last year, which was, I think they had 82 wins last year. Their number was 82.5 this year. But as I recall, their Pythag, though, was like 90 last year. And so we both liked the over on the Royals.
This one's annoying.
Yep. There's a few annoying ones here.
Because
Aaron.
I know what their record was, so I'm looking at this.
Right.
We lost it by a half game.
Half game. We
Which,
lost
by the
it- we
way,
missed it by half. We both picked the over, and we were both off by a half a game.
I mean, we got it right. It's just you put a half game in because you don't want ties in betting, obviously. So,
That's right.
yeah,
That's right.
that's really annoying to me.
All right. So there we got.
In
so
my
I got-
head,
both of us missed that one.
in my head, I'm going to give myself credit for that one because it's good to be nice to yourself and forgiving of your foibles. and things like that.
Gracious. All right.
Yeah.
All right. And then finally, the White Sox. Now, the White Sox had the lowest over-under number we have ever seen. It was 54.5. And we're talking about how hard it is to be under 54.5. I ended up talking. I think I had put as a estimate prior to seeing this number that they would get 55 wins. And so I was like, I guess I got to stick with the over. You were decidedly no. They were so bad last year, even with the dead. Yeah. We explained the dead cat bounce theory during this podcast.
We just didn't take our own. I didn't take my own advice.
You didn't take your own advice. So you picked both the under, and then you bet on it. The White Sox finished with 60 wins, 5.5 clear. So I got that one right. You got that one wrong.
So I went 1-4, and you went 4-1.
That is correct.
Wow.
1-4 versus 4.
The king of the AL Central, they call John Boner.
That is right. Yeah.
I believe they call me moron. Is that what people have been calling me after this? Yeah.
Oh, we call you West. A lot worse things than that.
That's true.
All right. Let's talk about the AL West then quickly.
Yeah. Let's just run through these ones.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Houston, 86.5. We both, again, the discussion last year was how can this number be so low for a division winner? And that was the case throughout the entire American League. Each of the division winners we thought had a much lower number than we are used to seeing in Vegas. Right. Neither of us were sold on Houston. Both of us, we use this as an example of one of the reasons why we do this, because both of us were down on Houston, but we both took a look at the expected number for it and bet the over.
Yeah.
And we not only took the over, but we bet the over. And then on the opposite of the annoying side is we just sweated it out.
Yeah.
Because Houston, despite a collapse in August and September with Carlos Correa on the roster, ended up getting that 87th win. And that was it.
Do you think that Carlos Correa was trying to make us lose? And that's why they collapsed after they acquired him? That would be interesting.
Perhaps.
All right. Well, that's a win.
That's a win. That was a win for us.
Okay.
Next up was Seattle. Seattle was just supposed to be a game back, 85.5. They and Seattle, Texas actually both had 85.5 wins. We both liked Seattle, despite the fact that they did almost nothing in the offseason. We just kind of took a look at this division, and I think both said, this is going to be one of the top two teams and 85.5 is a fairly low number for a top two team. And then Seattle ended up winning the division with 90 wins. And so we both got that one right as well.
Hey,
we didn't bet on it, but we both got it in terms of our overall picks.
You know what they say about Gleeman and the Geek? Nobody covers the top of the American League West like John Bonus and Aaron Gleeman.
That is correct.
Okay. Texas.
Texas, we ended up being right about as well. Their number was also 85.5. We liked them less than we liked Seattle. Although the discussion there was we didn't trust their pitching, their starting rotation. And oddly enough, that ended up being Texas's strength in the first half of the season was their starting pitching. So we got exactly wrong, but we got the total right because they only won 81 games. They finished under that projection by 4.5.
You know what I'll say, John? It's a line drive in the box score, man.
Exactly right.
Doesn't matter if you lined it off the wall or you squibbed it in front of the plate. A hit is a hit.
That is correct.
And I need hits. I'm in a 0 for 200. I need anything. Okay.
So right now we're perfect in the AL West now.
This is a good place to stop. I've always said that you want to stop about halfway through the second division. There's no reason to go on, I don't think.
Los Angeles Angels. No, I want to continue going on because I think I got this next one right. But barely. Los Angeles Angels, I was surprised that the number was 72.5. I had them down for like 67 wins. So for me, it was an easy under. You said you were the only person in America that was going to bet the over on this one, 72.5. And you never really explained why during the podcast, but you not only picked them for the over, you bet them on the over. And the truth is you were more right than me because they won 72 games and just missed it. They just missed it, Aaron.
I would have been by
half a game.
You're telling me I was a half game from being the only correct person in America? Which is how I view myself in general.
Similar to the it looks like a a line
so
drive in the box
annoying.
score. It looks like a pop fly in the box score.
Oh, that
So
is
that was
so
the first-
annoying.
That was the first one you missed for the AL West. You're now 3 for 4 and 1 for 2 on your bets, right? And then we get to the Sacramento
Yeah.
A's, right? Which I still have it on here as Oakland because I haven't bothered to update it. 71.5. We both thought that number was crazy or too much because they had been pretty bad.
Yeah.
So we both picked the under, and I bet on it, and we were both wrong. They got 76 wins this year, had a pretty good year.
They had a great second half. Like they were
Yeah.
a winning team for much of the season after
Yes.
kind of a mediocre first half.
That's
But
right.
That one.
So we ended up missing that one. So you went 3 and 2 in your overall picks, 1 and 2 in your bets. I went 4 and 1 and 1 and 2 in my bets.
Okay.
All right. So then let's get to the final, the AL East.
I don't think this is going to be real pretty either, if I'm being honest with you. AL East. There we go.
Okay, Yankees. 88.5. We were surprised at how low that total was for the overall, but they had lots of questions about their pitching. Garrett Cole had just been announced for Tommy John. We had a lot of questions about the rotation. And frankly, I think for the most part, you picked the under on this for the same reason I didn't bet on it. We just don't like the Yankees.
I mean, I picked
Like-
under, same as under on the White Sox.
I basically was like, I will not be happy if I bet
Right.
on this one, because even if they win, I'm not going to be happy about it. So I'm not going to do it. And you picked the under. Well, that ended up being a mistake because they ended up winning 94 games. That cleared it by 5.5. And so I got that one right and you got that one wrong, but neither of us bet on it. So it's just the regular one.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Then we've got next was supposed to be Baltimore.
I was so wrong on this.
Yeah.
Can I tell you that like the week before the season, The Athletic asked all of the writers on staff, like, a couple dozen people, to make like our division picks and World Series picks. And I correctly predicted that the Los Angeles Dodgers would win the World Series, which
Yeah.
also like 80% of the people predicted.
Right, of course. Right.
And I had them beating the Baltimore Orioles,
Oh, did you really?
who instead were horrendous, fired their manager right away, and traded guys at the deadline and limped to the finish line. That was my World Series participant pick. Yeah.
We both were confident on the over with Baltimore. We both chastised Baltimore for having a terrible offseason.
I know. Again, I didn't listen to myself. That's what,
But we both also felt like ultimately their young hitting is going to overcome that, and they're not going to be as good as they could be.
yeah.
But they are going to be better than 86.5. And we were both wrong, and we both bet on it. They won 75, which would sound like the most disappointing. I would have pegged them as the most disappointing team in the American League, but the truth is the Twins were more disappointing. They were further down.
Yeah, I would. That's interesting because like they certainly had much higher aspirations than the
Right.
Twins, so the
That's right.
level of disappointment there. But I mean, I guess we can just conclude they could not succeed as a young lineup without Matt Borg-Schulte.
Well, I did like that. Is for all the times we've mentioned that David Popkins ended up leaving the Twins and leading the Blue Jays to the promised land. Borg-Schulte left Baltimore and they completely collapsed. And then he came to Minnesota and they completely collapsed.
Don't ask what his new team did, and you're okay at that point. Okay, all right. I don't like this division as much. Go on.
Let's see. Third overall of 86.5 was Boston, and that number surprised both of us. I had them pegged at like 82 wins. We liked a bunch of stuff they did in the offseason, but we didn't think that they had raised themselves up to the 86.5 level. Yeah. Well, the truth is they raised themselves to the 86.5 and then higher. They got up to 89 wins, cleared it by 2.5, and so we both missed the under on that pick.
Yeah.
Went 0 for 2. You are now 0 for 3 in that division, 0 for 1 in your bets. I am 1 and 2 in that division, 0 for 1 on my bets. We should stay away from the AL East.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
then
we know that the Twins should stay away. Well, maybe not.
Here come the Rays, Tampa Bay Rays, which, to your credit, you listened to yourself, which is the rule you always have. Always choose the over on the Tampa Bay Rays. I chose the under on that particular case. I kind of thought they were potentially the worst in that division. I think I was close. I think, honestly, I had them at 81 wins, and a bunch of these I was off by. I had to go with the half game and see how it ended up. They ended up getting only 77 wins, so the under hit. That was one that I picked and which I bet on. So, and you missed that one. And then finally, the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah.
who were picked to be last in the AL East by Vegas. 78.5 was their total. We both admired Tampa for trying to get a lot of big names in, and they did end up bringing in a couple of people that we mentioned,
Toronto.
right?
You said Tampa, but you mean Toronto? Yeah.
I'm sorry, Toronto. Sorry, yes, Toronto. We admired them, chasing as many as they did, as many big names as they did, but ultimately they didn't get that much. But still, we thought 78.5 was a little bit low. So we both took the over on that, and you bet on it, and that ended up being absolutely right. They not only won 94 wins, only had 94 wins. They ended up winning the division, and ended up we got that one right. So you went 1-4 in that overall. So
yeah, not a great overall.
Final totals. I was 11 of 15.
Look at
I
you.
went 11-4, and 4 of my 6 bets hit. You were 5 of 15, and 2 of your 6 bets.
5 and 10. But more
5 and 10,
importantly than going 5 and 10, what's the most important division to get correct? The AL West, obviously. And then what do you really make someone smart is knowing the World Series participant from the league.
That's exactly right.
And that was Toronto, and I got that correct. So really, in a way, I almost did better than you in a lot of ways.
A lot of ways, yeah. You and I made an effort throughout the podcast when both of us were like, a lot of times I ended up going first, and you would go, I don't have strong feelings. I'm going to go the other way to make it interesting. We varied on 6 of the teams. On 9 of the teams, we picked the same, and on 6 of them, we changed. And you went 0 for 6.
So you're saying I just, for the sake of making an interesting podcast.
That's exactly right. That's what I would say. That's what you should hang your hat on. Is you ended up choosing it as
that would be a little more like, I'm willing to go with that because it makes me look slightly less stupid. That like Aaron sacrificed his own record to just provide a counter argument. But the premise falls apart because that relies on me thinking your opinion on things was correct. And that I would take the opposite of I thought you would.
Actually, what it really means is I'm the dumb one for putting the $100 bet on our MVP picks as opposed to the over-under picks. What we should have done is got $100 on each one of them.
I have a new spin on me doing poorly. I only really care about bets where there's money involved.
Good.
And I took the $100 from John, and in fact, I've been using it to wipe my butt for the last month.
I consider this the hustle. And then you take the sucker for the MVP bet money. That's the way.
Right. I like that even better. Yes. I intentionally was horrible at this with no money involved, so that I could get your $100, which John did. He did pay me.
Sure.
I'm gonna be clear about that.
Did, yeah.
Yeah, that's bad. 5 and 10. I mean, obviously, to specifically be wrong about the Twins and the Central in general is what would bother me. I don't really care. I don't really care that I don't know the East all that well. I mean, whatever.
That's right.
But yeah, 83 and a half. I will be. Well, shut up because we're going very long here. But I will be very curious what the Twins over under is, and it's hard to. We could probably find some sports book that already has it, but I mean, it's going to depend if they trade Lopez and they trade Ryan and stuff. But I don't. We've generally seen their over unders in the low to mid 80s pretty consistently during this regime. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. My question, I guess, is will they have the lowest over under in the AL Central? Have the White Sox, even with some of the young talent that they've called up, and they were we talked about this down the stretch. They were just a better present day roster than the Twins by the end of the season. And so I wonder if this, in spring training, when we're going over the over-unders and making our sure to be wrong, in my case, picks, if the White Sox will actually have the higher over-under than the Twins, 74 to 73 or something like that.
When I was in Vegas, we can have last before, one of Corey Coe's friends, who's a professional poker player as well, but he's also a professional gambler, and he gambles specifically on baseball. And so we had a long discussion about whether or not I was more pessimistic about the Twins than he was, etc. And he and I have been texting or DMing back and forth since then. And one of the things that I asked him this week was, what do you think the over-under is going to be? If you had to guess what the over-under is going to be for the Twins for this year. Well, he's a little more optimistic than I am, and he picked a little bit higher number, but he did say, those numbers aren't out there yet, but here's what is out there. The numbers for your chances of winning the World Series. for DraftKings and FanDuel. All that stuff is listed, and he just texted back yesterday that they are sort of in the group with like Oakland and St. Louis in terms of chances to win the World Series, like the teams that people don't have a lot of hope on right now. So he's guessing it's going to be about 75 wins.
Yeah, I just said 73. So yeah, I think that's about right.
That's an interesting way of when you don't have that number to say, well, let's take a look at the World Series odds and see what group of teams you're in. That's about way to do it. So.
Well, this is a real blow to the ego. Edit this whole section out of the podcast. what I can't afford to do is, even in a joking way, leave anyone with the impression that I'm not just pure genius.
I'm going to actually rearrange it so it's at the beginning of the podcast, and then it's going to play in a loop.
Yeah. I mean, the big story here is I was 5-10 and you were 11-4, so we had a winning record.
That's right. Exactly right. There we go.
Let's do that. We're a team after all, John. I always say that. We are one and the same. I consider myself part of the bonus family. So we had a winning record.
Yeah, I mean, that means on the 9 that we agreed on, we went 5-4.
Right.
That's right.
That's genius. That's genius.
That's right. Yeah,
if a baseball team goes 5-4 in any 9-game stretch, they will make the playoffs.
It covers the VIG, sure, right?
Yeah,
close to it.
Yeah. I'm not trying to get rich off these picks. I'm trying not to go broke off these picks. All right. Well, this probably should be our last show, because how could anybody respect my opinion on anything after
exactly? All right.
5-10.
But if you do want to listen to more,
yeah.
But if you do want to listen to more, go to patreon.com/Gleeman. We will be back next week. I might be coming to you from the GM meetings. We'll see what that leads to in terms of goofy podcast.
Yeah. And where are the GM meetings, by the way?
Vegas.
Yeah. You can put a lot of money down on your newfound gambling genius.
That's exactly right. But if you don't want to pay for patreon.com, we'll probably be back with a free show here in about 2 weeks. We want to thank the people who were the sponsors for this free show. There'll be Hims Hair and Raycon and BetterHelp and Prize Picks, and a special thank you to Black Stack Brewing. It's now being distributed to all of Greater Minnesota, so stop by your favorite liquor store or the Black Stack Tap Room to grab your favorite brew and try something new. Get that $2 off a 4-pack at the tap room. I don't know. Anything else you want to cover, Mr. Gleeman?
No, I have a meeting. I have a GA meeting to go to. So.
All right. See you later. Bye.
Goodbye.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.
Gleeman